What is the rarest Beyblade release? Skeleton Phantom Orion, perhaps? There's a lot of pretty obscure, pretty rare releases, but the thing that takes the top slot, most of you guys have probably never heard of. It's so incredibly rare that only 9 are accounted for in the world. That doesn't mean there's only 9, but as far as the community is aware, only 9 have been accounted for. This is the metal bit chip from Beyblade, the original series. The information on this has been sort of hard to figure out timeline-wise. So, from what we know, the metal bit chip was released at events prior to the A-series Beyblade. So, in the original series, there was numbers delineating what part of the series it was in. I believe the A series is when the start of Bakuten Shoot is. So a lot of us call Plastic Gen just Bakuten Shoot Beyblade, but it's not exactly accurate. Bakuten Shoot Beyblade is the manga, so it's referring to that story specifically. But the original Beyblade series actually started before Bakuten Shoot Beyblade, so that wasn't the first iteration of the story. The first piece of actual narrative story that we got for Beyblade was this. This is Jisadai Battle Beigoma Beyblade. It is a Game Boy Color game that released in 1999. This is the first piece of Beyblade media, and the storyline is completely different from what Bakuten Shoot would be. Bakuten Shoot did take some early elements from the game. They took Tyson, the main character, they took Kai, they took the character Jin, but pretty much everything else outside of that is completely different. So in the Beyblade spin-up guide, it actually gives us some clues as to when this was released. So according to the spin-up guide, the metal bit chip was released as a tournament prize, and it's actually not listed as the rarest of the tournament prizes. It's a C-class prize, which is not like the highest of the high rare, but I think due to the size of the bit chips, a lot of those ended up getting lost over time. So while technically some of this stuff would have been more rare at the time, current standing, I think the metal bit chip is the rarest, considering that there's only 9 accounted for. So post Spin Up Guide 1 and post Bakuten Shoot /A releases, the bit chip vanished. They just stopped making them. They were no longer accessible, it was never a retail release, and a lot of people just never even knew that they existed. Thankfully, Jawa's Junkyard took it upon himself to make a reproduction of this. I didn't have any of these in my collection, but he sent me a variety of repro parts, and one of the things that he sent me were these bit chips, which is super exciting because I've always wanted one of these, but they go for hundreds of dollars. I've seen some of them go like close to $1,000, which is absolutely insane for just a bit chip. So this tiny thing is worth hundreds of dollars. Thankfully, now that we have a repro, you guys can get these fairly inexpensively, and compared to the original, this is actually 3 grams heavier, and for context, that's about as heavy as an attack ring, depending on which one that you're grabbing. So it's a pretty substantial amount of weight. Curiously, there's really no mention of this after this spin-up guidebook. I even have a fan magazine that talks about the first national champions, and nowhere in this book does it mention the metal bit chip. During the time of the national championship, that metal bit chip would have been accessible, and because they're national champions, they probably would have had them. So it's really curious that they're not shown in here. The combos that they use, though, a couple of them are missing the bit chips, which is strange. It's really weird that the bit chips wouldn't be shown on the combos unless they were removed for the documentation of the combos for whatever reason. What that reason could be, I don't know. Maybe at some point they made them illegal to use in tournaments. I have no idea. But there are bit chips missing from the national championship combos. So did they use metal bit chips? I'm not sure. Timeline-wise, it would make sense, but they're not listed, so I don't know. So the original series did have 2 standard versions of a bit chip. So the original had a shortened bit chip with a bit chip cover, And these later ended up getting replaced by these long bit chips. These were less likely to pop out during battle. And the metal bit chip is, of course, the shortened version as well. So in order to use this, you would need to use a bit chip cover to keep that thing in place and from popping out. They do have a tendency to rattle around a little bit depending on sort of the sizing. And these are a bit shortened to keep the prongs from popping out. So the shortened bit chips are normally pressure fit. They could rattle a bit, and without the bit chip cover, they could easily pop out, which the bit chip cover does actually add some extra weight compared to the extended bit chip. Now, how big of a difference that bit chip would have made in battle is a bit questionable. Super early on in plastic gen, stuff was really light. However, the weight discrepancy from the beginning to the end didn't change drastically. I think the biggest difference was the weight discs, although they did have the heavier ones pretty early on. After the first few releases, they started to get bigger, especially sort of later on. Things like wide defense and wide survive became a lot more common. And because the bit chip is adding weight to the top, it could have actually made them top heavy, possibly doing more harm than good. Later on, we ended up getting the heavy metal core from Metal Trigger, which was super helpful in lowering the center of gravity for a lot of these things. So paired with that, it may have made a bigger impact in sort of keeping the thing balanced. But we're gonna go ahead and throw it into a couple battles. I've got the first ever Beyblade Stadium released. This thing is pretty rare to find intact. This thing isn't even chipped. I got this new in the box, but we're gonna throw it up against a Seaborg combo. We've got 10 wide on here, and this thing is a repro from Jawa's Junkyard as well. Super crispy looking, and we've got an inverted tip on this just to make it a little more aggressive. So I think I just chipped my stadium. I don't think the weight of this is going to be the difference between this thing getting knocked out and not getting knocked out. 3 grams is a decent amount of weight, but it's not so much that this thing is going to all of a sudden become a tank. All right, now switching it up a little bit, I've got 2 galleons here. So they are both on the same combo. They are stock, aside from the metal bit chip on this one, and they both have the 10 wide repro from Jawa's Junkyard. So mirrored, with the only difference being the metal bit chip, which one is going to outspin the other? Is the metal bit chip going to make this a little too top heavy and kill some of its stamina, or is this going to be the difference between winning out in what is effectively like a double stamina matchup? I think this is probably where this would shine if it makes a difference in stamina versus stamina matchups. All right, I'm going to launch the metal bit chip one first. All right, them not staying in the stadium is a problem, so I am switching to the HMS Tornado Balance Stadium. This one has a tornado ridge and smaller exit, so hopefully they won't get knocked out of the stadium. All right, so final thoughts. Was this worth the aftermarket price tag of hundreds of dollars in terms of performance? I don't think so. I think it's a cool novelty. I think it's fun to try to like balance tune and min-max things. However, I don't think that this would have been the difference between winning or losing. If you guys want to pick one of these up, like I said, Jawa's Junkyard has 2 packs of these. You can also get these shiny new 10 wide repro parts. He's got a few other repro parts as well for like the metal frames for Dragoon MS, MSUV, a couple other HMS parts. He's got his Dronzer MS repro, as well as a variety of fully metal unreleased Beyblades, which are pretty cool, and some really cool full metal Pokemon cards that I think would look sick on a display. I think the Mewtwo is my favorite at the moment, but if you're looking for gift ideas, yeah, feel free to check out Jawa's Junkyard. I will have a link in the pinned comment and the description. And let me know what you guys think about the metal bit chips, if you think it deserves the notoriety that it gets and the price tag. Personally, in terms of rarity, I sort of get it, but in terms of performance, like, it's certainly not worth hundreds of dollars. It's sort of like the equivalent of people paying, you know, $300 for Valkyrie Volt just to get the metal lock chip prior to Emperor coming out, which I think is a hilarious sort of full circle that we've gone here at this point. But I did exclude like one-off stuff, so things like, you know, Takafumi's like weird pen Pegasus Beyblade that he got, like one-off prizes and stuff like that. Didn't count those because they weren't accessible to like the average person, whereas this you could have obtained if you went to a tournament at the time. But anyway, yeah, hit up the comments, let me know what you think, smash the like for the algorithm, subscribe for future Beyblade and hobby content, and I'll see you guys in the next one.